The Galactic Council chamber fell silent when the human walked in. Commander Marcus Cole stood at exactly 6 feet tall, which was nothing special by Earth standards. But here, surrounded by the thin-limbed Velthari and the floating Mindori, he looked like something carved from stone. His boots echoed against the crystal floor. Each step sounded like thunder in the quiet room. The Velthari ambassador, a creature with 4 arms and skin like polished silver, leaned back in her chair. Her large black eyes studied the human with obvious discomfort. She had heard stories about these creatures from the young planet called Earth. Stories that kept her awake at night. Stories that made the mighty Crothian warriors check their weapons twice before entering human space. Marcus stopped at the center of the chamber. Around him sat representatives from 47 different species. Some had conquered entire star systems. Others had technology that could bend space and time. Yet every single one of them watched this human with the same expression: fear. "You requested this meeting," the High Chancellor said. He was a Mindori, a being made of pure energy contained within a mechanical shell. His voice buzzed like electricity through water. "Speak your piece, human." Marcus smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible. But several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably when they saw it. Humans smiled when they were happy. Humans also smiled before they did terrible things. No one could ever tell which smile was which. 3 days ago, Marcus began, his voice calm and steady, your combined fleet attacked one of our colony worlds, Nexus 7. Population of 2 million humans, families, children, scientists working on agricultural projects. The chamber remained silent. A few ambassadors exchanged glances. They knew what had happened at Nexus 7. The attack had been meant as a message, a reminder that humanity was still new to the galactic stage, a warning that they should know their place. Your ships destroyed our orbital defense stations, Marcus continued. They bombed our cities from space. They killed 400,000 people in the first hour. The Crothian general, a massive reptilian creature covered in armored scales, spoke up. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. You expanded into territory that was not yours. The council voted to teach your species a lesson in humility. Marcus turned to look at the Crothian. His expression did not change. A lesson, he repeated. Yes, I suppose you could call it that. He reached into his uniform pocket. Every guard in the chamber raised their weapons. Energy rifles hummed with deadly power. Plasma cannons locked onto the human's chest. But Marcus only pulled out a small data chip. He held it up between 2 fingers. This contains footage from Nexus 7, he said. Footage that your ships recorded during the attack. Footage that your commanders sent back to their governments as proof of their success. He placed the chip on the table in front of him. Would you like to see what happens next? The High Chancellor nodded slowly. A holographic display flickered to life above the table. It showed the burning ruins of a human city. Ships from a dozen different species filled the sky, still firing their weapons at anything that moved. Human bodies lay in the streets. Buildings collapsed into piles of rubble and ash. Then, something changed. From the smoke and fire, figures began to emerge. Human figures. They were covered in blood and dust. Many were injured. Some could barely walk. But they were not running away. They were moving forward, toward the enemy. The footage showed a human woman, probably in her 50s, standing on a pile of debris. She had a makeshift weapon in her hands, something cobbled together from pieces of destroyed machinery. An enemy soldier approached her, a Velthari in full combat armor. The Velthari was twice her size and armed with weapons that could vaporize steel. The woman did not hesitate. She did not retreat. She attacked. The Velthari went down in seconds. The woman took his weapon and kept moving forward. Your soldiers reported something interesting after the battle, Marcus said. His voice was still calm, but there was something cold underneath it now. They said that no matter how many humans they killed, more kept coming. They said that humans who should have been dead from their wounds continued fighting. They said that even the children threw rocks at their ships. The footage continued. It showed scene after scene of impossible resistance, humans fighting with broken bones, humans using their own vehicles as weapons, humans organizing counterattacks in the middle of an active bombing campaign. Your fleet had complete air superiority, Marcus said. You had better weapons, better armor, better training. You outnumbered our defense forces 20-1. By every logical measure, you should have won in less than an hour. He paused, letting the footage play. It now showed the sky above Nexus 7. The enemy fleet was in chaos. Ships were colliding with each other. Others were on fire, spiraling down toward the planet's surface. The battle lasted 6 days, Marcus said. On the 7th day, your fleet retreated. They left behind 43% of their ships, either destroyed or captured, along with over 800,000 soldiers who are now our prisoners. The chamber had gone completely still. The Crothian general's claws were digging into his chair, leaving deep scratches in the metal. The Velthari ambassador had turned a shade of gray that Marcus suspected meant extreme distress. You attacked us to teach us a lesson, Marcus said. He picked up the data chip and put it back in his pocket. I hope you learned something too. The High Chancellor's mechanical shell flickered with agitation. What do you want, human? Reparations? Territory? We can negotiate terms. Marcus shook his head. I did not come here to negotiate. I came here to explain something. Something that your species seem to have trouble understanding. He began walking around the chamber, passing by each ambassador in turn. Some leaned away from him. Others kept their hands near their weapons. But no one tried to stop him. Your civilizations are old, Marcus said. The youngest species in this room has existed for 50,000 years. You have seen empires rise and fall. You have survived wars that lasted longer than human recorded history. You think you understand conflict. He stopped in front of the Crothian general. The reptilian warrior was easily 3 times his size. His claws could tear through starship armor. His people had conquered 200 worlds through pure military might. Marcus looked up at him without any trace of fear. Your species fight wars to gain resources, Marcus said. To expand territory, to establish dominance. When the cost becomes too high, you retreat and regroup. When victory seems impossible, you surrender and negotiate. This is logical. This is reasonable. He turned to address the whole chamber. Humans are not logical, he said. Humans are not reasonable. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. When you attacked Nexus 7, you killed families. You killed children. You burned our homes and laughed while you did it. You thought this would break us. You thought we would learn our place and accept your dominance. Marcus walked back to the center of the chamber. His voice was still calm, but it carried to every corner of the room. You do not understand what you have done. You have not taught us to fear you. You have taught us to hate you, and a human who hates is the most dangerous thing in this universe. The Mindori High Chancellor's shell crackled with energy. Is that a threat, Commander Cole? Marcus considered the question for a moment. No, he said finally. A threat implies that I want something from you, that there is some action you could take to prevent what is coming. I am not here to threaten you. He reached into his pocket again. This time he pulled out a small metal cylinder. It was unremarkable in appearance, just a simple tube about the size of his finger. This is a message beacon, Marcus explained. When I press this button, it will send a signal to Earth. That signal will confirm that I have delivered humanity's response to the attack on Nexus 7. The Velthari ambassador found her voice. And what response would that be? Marcus looked at her. For the first time since entering the chamber, his expression changed. He smiled. It was the kind of smile that made every ambassador in the room feel suddenly cold. "We are coming," Marcus said simply. He pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every display screen in the chamber flickered to life. They showed the same thing, a map of known space. Humanity's territory was marked in blue, a small cluster of systems near the edge of the galaxy. The combined territory of the Galactic Council was marked in red, covering most of the known universe. Then new markers appeared, green dots, thousands of them, emerging from the blue territory. They were moving fast, impossibly fast. "What is this?" the High Chancellor demanded. "What are we looking at?" "Our fleet," Marcus said. "All of it. Every ship humanity has ever built. Every soldier we have ever trained. We have been preparing for this moment for a long time." The Crothian general stood up so fast that his chair flew backward. "This is insane! You cannot possibly think you can fight the entire Galactic Council." Marcus shrugged. "You are probably right. We will probably lose. A lot of humans will die. Maybe all of us." He paused, letting those words sink in. "But here is the thing about humans that you still do not understand." He walked toward the exit of the chamber. "We would rather die fighting than live as slaves. We would rather burn the galaxy to ash than let you hurt our children. We do not surrender. We do not forget. And we absolutely do not forgive." He stopped at the door and turned back to face the chamber one last time. "You wanted war," Marcus said. "Congratulations. You have one." He walked out. Behind him, the chamber erupted into chaos. Ambassadors were shouting at each other. Military commanders were frantically trying to contact their fleets. The High Chancellor's shell was flashing with colors that meant extreme alarm. But Marcus did not look back. He walked through the corridors of the station with steady steps, passing by guards who watched him with wide eyes. Word had already spread about what happened in the chamber. By tomorrow, it would spread across the galaxy. The humans were coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. Outside, his ship was waiting, a small craft compared to the massive vessels of the galactic powers, but it had gotten him here. It would get him home. As he climbed aboard, Marcus allowed himself a moment of doubt. Everything he had said in that chamber was true. Humanity was going to war against enemies that outmatched them in every measurable way. The odds of survival were almost zero. But then he thought about Nexus 7. He thought about the footage he had watched. The footage of ordinary humans, farmers and teachers and engineers standing up to an invasion force that should have crushed them in minutes. He thought about the 400,000 dead, about the children who never got to grow up. His doubt faded away, replaced by something harder. Something colder, something that burned. Marcus Cole was afraid. Every human going to war was afraid, but fear had never stopped humanity before. He powered up his ship and set a course for home. Behind him, the Galactic Council was falling apart. 47 species who had ruled the stars for millions of years were realizing that they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something they did not understand, something that did not play by their rules, something that would not stop until it won or died trying. They had awakened humanity. Admiral Kethris of the Velthari Third Fleet had lived for 300 years. She had commanded ships in 12 major conflicts. She had earned her position through decades of proven excellence. Nothing in the universe could surprise her anymore. Or so she thought until the humans arrived at Terminus Station. The station was the largest military outpost in this sector. It housed 50,000 soldiers and 200 warships. It had enough firepower to crack planets and shields strong enough to withstand sustained bombardment for months. Every military strategist in the Council agreed that Terminus Station was unassailable. The humans took it in 4 hours. Kethris watched the battle recordings on her command deck, trying to understand what had happened. Her tactical officers stood behind her in stunned silence. None of them could explain it either. The human fleet had appeared without warning. Their ships were smaller than Velthari vessels, with less armor and weaker weapons. By every tactical calculation, they should have been destroyed within minutes of engaging the station's defenses. Instead, they flew like nothing Kethris had ever seen. Human pilots took their ships through maneuvers that should have killed them. They dove through fields of defensive fire, spinning and rolling at speeds that would have crushed any Velthari crew into paste. Their ships took damage that should have been fatal, and they kept flying. They rammed their own vessels into enemy positions when their weapons ran dry. But the worst part was not the ships. The worst part was what happened when the humans boarded the station. Kethris switched to internal security footage. She watched as human soldiers poured through the station's corridors. They were wearing armor that looked primitive compared to Velthari battlesuits. Their weapons were chemical projectile launchers, ancient technology that most species had abandoned thousands of years ago. Those primitive weapons tore through her soldiers like paper. "Pause," Kethris commanded. The footage froze on a frame showing a human soldier. He was bleeding from multiple wounds. A piece of shrapnel was embedded in his left arm. Any Velthari would have collapsed from the pain alone. The human was smiling. "Commander Threll," Kethris said to her tactical officer, "explain to me how this is possible." Threll was a young officer, barely 70 years old. His 4 hands were shaking slightly as he pulled up data on his console. "Admiral, I have been reviewing the biological reports on humans. What I have found is disturbing." "Disturbing how?" Threll hesitated. "The humans call it adrenaline. It is a chemical their bodies produce in moments of extreme stress. It suppresses pain, increases strength, and accelerates their reflexes. In this state, they can continue fighting through injuries that would incapacitate any other species." Kethris frowned. "Other species have similar stress responses." "Not like this," Threll said. He pulled up more data. "Human adrenaline response is at least 3 times more powerful than any comparable biological mechanism we have recorded. Additionally, their bodies have developed other unique adaptations." He displayed an image of human internal organs. "Their hearts can increase output by over 200% during exertion. Their muscles can tear themselves apart and continue functioning. They have a backup respiratory system that allows them to remain conscious even with reduced oxygen. They can survive injuries that would kill any other sentient species." Kethris stared at the screen. "How did they evolve these capabilities?" "Their home planet," Threll said. "Earth. We have been researching it extensively since the war began. Admiral, that world is a death trap." He displayed images of Earth. Volcanoes erupting fire into the sky. Massive storms that could swallow entire cities. Predators with teeth and claws designed to kill efficiently. Microscopic organisms that could destroy organic tissue in hours. Humans evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill them, Threll explained. "Every generation, only the strongest survived. Their entire species is the result of millions of years of violent natural selection. They are not just adapted for survival. They are adapted for war." Kethris felt a chill run through her. She had fought many enemies in her long career. She had never felt afraid of any of them. But looking at these data, seeing what humans truly were, she felt something she had not experienced in centuries. Terror. "There is more," Threll continued reluctantly. "The psychological profiles we have compiled are even more concerning." He brought up new data. "Humans experience a phenomenon called hatred. Other species feel anger, certainly, but human hatred is different. It is persistent, generational. Humans can pass their hatred down to their children, who pass it to their children, and so on. They have fought wars lasting centuries over events that happened before any of the participants were born." "That is irrational," Kethris said. "Yes, it is completely irrational. And that is what makes them so dangerous." Threll's voice dropped. "Admiral, We attacked their colony. We killed their families. According to human psychology, they will now hate us forever. Not just the ones who survived the attack, not just their children. Every human for all of human history will carry this hatred. They will never stop. They will never forgive. They will hunt us until one of our species no longer exists. The command deck fell silent. Every officer was staring at the screens, processing what they had just heard. Kethris made a decision. Prepare my shuttle. I need to speak with the council directly. 3 days later, Kethris stood before the emergency assembly. The chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. Fear hung in the air like smoke. In the 2 weeks since Marcus Cole had declared war, the humans had taken 14 systems. They had destroyed or captured over 300 ships. They had killed or captured nearly 2 million council soldiers, and they showed no signs of slowing down. You must understand what we are facing, Kethris told the assembly. These are not normal enemies. They do not think like us. They do not fight like us. They do not stop like us. She displayed the data she had compiled, the biological reports, the psychological profiles, the battle recordings. She watched as ambassadors who had ruled empires for millennia turned pale with fear. I have analyzed their tactics, Kethris continued. They have no sense of self-preservation when they are motivated. They will trade their lives for even small advantages. They use strategies that no rational species would consider because those strategies require accepting certain death. The Crothian general stood up. We still outnumber them massively. Even with these capabilities, they cannot possibly defeat our combined forces. Kethris shook her head. Numbers are meaningless against an enemy who does not care about survival. For every human we kill, 3 more volunteer to take their place. Our soldiers are professionals who fight for pay and honor. Their soldiers are motivated by something far more powerful. What? The general demanded. Revenge, Kethris said simply. Every human soldier I have encountered believes they are fighting for their dead, for their murdered families, for children who were killed by our bombs. They are not trying to win territory or resources. They are trying to make us pay. She paused, letting her words sink in. I have been studying human history. They have a pattern in their wars. When they fight for practical goals, they can be negotiated with. They can be bought off. But when they fight for emotional reasons, for revenge or justice, or what they call freedom, they become something else entirely. Kethris displayed images from human history. Ancient battles where outnumbered forces had fought to the last man, cities that had endured years of siege rather than surrender, resistance movements that had operated for decades against impossible odds. They have a saying on Earth, Kethris said. They would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. I thought this was just propaganda when I first heard it. After fighting them for 2 weeks, I know it is the literal truth. The High Chancellor spoke up. What do you recommend, Admiral? Kethris took a deep breath. What she was about to say would end her career. It might even end her life. But she had to say it anyway. We need to surrender. The chamber exploded into chaos. Ambassadors were screaming. Military commanders were demanding her arrest. The Crothian general looked ready to tear her apart with his bare claws. Silence! The High Chancellor's voice boomed through the chamber. Slowly, order was restored. Explain yourself, Admiral. Kethris stood her ground. We started this war to teach humanity a lesson, to put them in their place. We believed that a show of force would make them submit. We were wrong. She displayed casualty reports. The numbers were staggering. The Council had lost more soldiers in 2 weeks than in the previous century combined. Every attack we make, every human we kill, only makes them fight harder. They are not defending territory anymore. They are on a crusade, a holy war. They will not stop until we are all dead, or they are. She looked around the chamber at the faces of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They were afraid. Good. They should be. There is only one way this war ends without mutual extinction. We must sue for peace. We must admit we were wrong. We must offer them whatever they want to make them stop. The Crothian general laughed bitterly. You expect us to bow to these primitives, to admit defeat to a species that has only been in space for 2 centuries? I expect you to survive, Kethris replied. Your pride is not worth the destruction of our civilizations. The debate raged for hours. Some argued for total war, throwing everything they had at the humans until nothing was left. Others supported Kethris, recognizing the impossible situation they had created. In the end, the High Chancellor called for a vote: surrender or fight, peace or war. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The vote was split almost evenly, but in the end, pride won. The Council voted to continue the war, to show the humans that they could not be intimidated, to prove that the ancient powers of the galaxy would not bow to newcomers. Kethris watched the vote with a heavy heart. She had tried. She had failed. As she left the chamber, a Mindori diplomat approached her. His mechanical shell flickered with colors she had never seen before. Admiral, may I speak with you privately? They walked together to a quiet corridor. The Mindori looked around, making sure they were alone. I voted for peace, he said. As did many others. We know you are right. The humans cannot be defeated through conventional means. Then why did the vote fail? Kethris asked. Because most of our leaders have never experienced true fear. They have never faced an enemy they could not bribe or threaten or destroy. They do not understand what the humans truly are. He paused. But some of us do understand, and some of us are making preparations. What kind of preparations? The Mindori leaned closer. There is a faction within the Council that believes this war will destroy us all. We are reaching out to the humans directly, secretly, trying to negotiate a separate peace. Kethris felt hope for the first time in weeks. Will they listen? We do not know, but we have to try. The Mindori's shell flickered again. Admiral, I believe you should join us. Your analysis of the humans is the most accurate I have seen. We need your expertise. Kethris thought about her duty to the Velthari, her oath to the Council, her 300 years of service. Then she thought about her children, her grandchildren, all the young Velthari who would die if this war continued. Tell me what you need me to do, she said. 3 weeks later, a secret meeting was arranged. A small ship from the Peace faction would meet with a human representative on a neutral asteroid. No weapons, no guards. Just a conversation. Kethris volunteered to be the faction's representative. She had studied the humans more than anyone. She knew how they thought. She knew what they feared. She knew what they wanted. At least, she thought she did. The asteroid was cold and dark. Kethris waited in the designated meeting chamber, her heart's pounding. She had faced death many times in her career. This was different. This was not battle. This was something more terrifying. This was hope. The door opened. A human walked in. He was average height for his species, with brown skin and dark eyes. He wore simple civilian clothes, no armor or weapons visible. He looked like he could have been any ordinary human from any ordinary colony. But Kethris knew better. This was no ordinary human. This was someone the human government had trusted to speak for their entire species. This was someone important. Admiral Kethris, the human said. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. I am David Chen. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Kethris bowed her head slightly. Thank you for coming. I know your government does not trust us. Trust is earned, David said. He sat down across from her. You wanted to talk about peace, so talk. Kethris gathered her thoughts. She had prepared extensively for this moment. She had memorized statistics and arguments and proposals, but looking into this human's eyes, all of that seemed inadequate. "I want to understand something first," she said, "before we discuss terms. I want to understand why you are really fighting." David raised an eyebrow. "You attacked our colony. You killed our people. Is that not reason enough?" "It is reason to fight, yes, but what I have seen goes beyond fighting. Your soldiers throw themselves into certain death with smiles on their faces. Your civilians pick up weapons and charge armored vehicles. You do not fight like you want to win. You fight like you want us to suffer." David was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, more honest. "There is a concept in human psychology called righteous anger," he said. "It is what we feel when someone hurts the innocent, when someone attacks the helpless, when someone destroys something beautiful for no reason." He leaned forward. "Your council attacked Nexus 7 because they wanted to teach us humility. They killed children to make a political point. They laughed while our cities burned." His eyes were hard now, cold. Every human in the galaxy felt that. Every single one of us. We did not just lose 400,000 people that day. We lost our innocence, our belief that the universe was basically fair. Your council took that from us. Kethris nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand. "We are not fighting for territory," David continued. "We are not fighting for resources or power. We are fighting because if we do not, we will never be able to look at ourselves in the mirror again. We are fighting because giving up would mean those children died for nothing." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "You asked why we fight, like we want you to suffer. The truth is, we do want you to suffer. We want you to feel what we felt. We want you to wake up at night with nightmares about the things you have done. We want you to understand that actions have consequences." He turned back to face her. "But we also want this to end. We are not monsters. We do not want to destroy your civilizations. We just want to be left alone, to live in peace, to raise our children without fear of another attack." Kethris felt tears forming in her eyes. She had expected anger. She had expected threats. She had not expected this painful, honest vulnerability. "I am sorry," she said. The words felt inadequate. "What was done to your people was wrong. I knew it was wrong when it happened. Many of us knew. We should have stopped it." David nodded. "Yes, you should have." They sat in silence for a while, two beings from species that had been trying to kill each other. Two individuals who had more in common than either had expected. Finally, David spoke again. "The human government sent me here because they believe peace is possible. But it will not be easy. My people are angry. They want revenge. Any peace deal will need to address that." "What would you require?" Kethris asked. "3 things. First, full reparations to the families of the victims of Nexus 7. Every family that lost someone will be compensated. Second, the commanders who ordered and carried out the attack will stand trial. Not mock trials in your courts. Real trials with human judges and human juries." Kethris winced. Those were hard terms. Many in the council would rather die than submit to human justice. "And the third thing?" she asked. David met her eyes. "An apology. A real apology. Not from diplomats or politicians. From the council itself. A public acknowledgement that what was done to Nexus 7 was wrong. That our people did not deserve to die. That our children mattered." His voice cracked slightly. "You took our dead and you turned them into a lesson. A warning. We want them remembered as people. As individuals who loved and laughed and dreamed. We want the galaxy to know who they were." Kethris felt those tears finally fall. "I will bring these terms to the peace faction. I cannot promise they will be accepted, but I will fight for them, I swear it." David nodded. "That is all we ask. Fight for peace like you fight for war. Give it everything you have. Maybe, just maybe, we can find a way out of this together." He extended his hand. Kethris had read about this human gesture. It was how they sealed agreements, how they showed trust. She reached out and took his hand. It was warm, soft. Nothing like the killing machines she had seen in the battle recordings. "Thank you," she said, "for giving us a chance." David smiled. It was a sad smile, full of pain and hope and exhaustion. "Thank you for taking it." They talked for several more hours, planning, hoping, building the foundations of something that might save both their species. Outside, the war continued. Ships burned, soldiers died, hatred and fear spread like fire across the galaxy. But in that small room on that cold asteroid, two enemies had become something else. They had become allies, partners in the most important mission either had ever undertaken, the mission to end a war before it destroyed everything. And humanity was angry. The peace negotiations nearly collapsed 17 times in the first month. Admiral Kethris lost count of how many heated arguments she had witnessed. How many times representatives from both sides had stormed out of the room. How many threats had been exchanged, but they kept coming back. Both sides knew the alternative was too terrible to accept. Meanwhile, the war continued to rage across the galaxy. Neither side would agree to a ceasefire during negotiations. The humans said they could not trust the Council not to use the pause to reinforce their positions. The Council said the same about the humans. So soldiers kept dying while diplomats argued about the future. David Chen worked tirelessly to hold the fragile peace process together. He shuttled between human commanders and council representatives, translating not just languages but entire ways of thinking. He explained human emotions to species that had never experienced them. He explained alien logic to humans who could not fathom putting calculations above feelings. Kethris became his partner in this work. Together, they formed a bridge between two fundamentally different civilizations. One night, after a particularly brutal negotiating session, David found Kethris alone in the observation deck. She was staring out at the stars, her four hands clasped behind her back. "Long day," he said, joining her at the window. "Long war," she replied. "I have been doing some calculations. At the current rate of casualties, both our civilizations will be crippled within 2 years, destroyed within 5. Even if one side wins, they will be too weak to survive. Other powers will move in, pick apart the remains." David nodded grimly. "My government has reached similar conclusions. The war hawks are starting to lose influence. People are tired. They want it to end. As do mine. The question is whether we can reach an agreement before it is too late." They stood in silence for a while, watching distant stars that had no idea their observers might soon cease to exist. "Can I ask you something personal?" David said eventually. "Of course. Do you hate us? Humans, I mean. After everything that has happened, everything we have done to your people." Kethris considered the question carefully. "I have seen your soldiers kill my friends. I have watched your ships destroy vessels I served on for decades. I have felt loss and pain that will never fully heal." She paused. "But hate? No, I do not hate you. I understand you. That is different. Understand us how? I understand that you are not evil. You are not monsters. You are beings who were hurt deeply and responded the only way you knew how. With violence, with rage, with a determination to never be hurt again." She turned to face him. "I understand because I have felt those things too. Every species has. The difference is that humans feel them more intensely, more completely. It makes you terrifying in battle. But it also makes you capable of great love, great loyalty, great sacrifice." David smiled slightly. "That might be the nicest thing anyone has ever said about humanity. I have been studying your species extensively. You are fascinating creatures. Your literature alone has given me more insight into your nature than any military report. What literature? Your myths, your stories, the tales you tell about yourselves. Kethrys's eyes grew thoughtful. You have this recurring theme in your stories, a small hero facing an impossible enemy, an underdog who refuses to give up even when all hope is lost. You tell these stories over and over in every culture, in every generation. She looked back at the stars. I think I understand why now. You tell them because that is how you see yourselves. Small creatures in a dangerous universe, constantly threatened, never safe, but determined to survive anyway, determined to matter. David was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. When we first came to the stars, we were so excited. We thought we would find friends out here, allies, beings who would welcome us into their community. And instead you found us, Kethrys said softly. Ancient powers who saw you as pests to be controlled, threats to be eliminated. It hurt, David admitted. More than I can describe. We came in peace, and you answered with war. We offered friendship, and you showed us contempt. Every human alive felt that rejection, that betrayal. I know, and I am sorry for my part in it. Even though I personally did not participate in the attack on Nexus 7, I am part of a system that allowed it to happen. We all have blood on our hands. They stood together in comfortable silence. Two individuals who had once been enemies, now bound together by shared purpose. The Council will vote tomorrow on the peace terms, Kethrys said. I believe they will accept. The Warhawks have lost too much support. The moderates are in control now. My government will accept too, David said. The people want justice, not genocide. As long as those responsible for Nexus 7 face real consequences, they will be satisfied. And after? What happens when the war ends? David considered the question. I do not know. We have spent so long fighting, I am not sure we remember how to do anything else. Perhaps that is what we need to learn, Kethrys suggested. Both of us. How to exist without enemies. How to build instead of destroy. David nodded slowly. It will not be easy. There is too much pain. Too many memories. Some humans will never forgive what was done. Some of your people will never accept us as equals. True, but some will. Enough will. Kethrys placed one of her 4 hands on his shoulder. And we will be there to help them. To show them that peace is possible. That understanding can overcome hatred. The next day, the Galactic Council voted to accept the human peace terms. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, the ancient powers had formally surrendered to a younger species, had admitted wrongdoing, had accepted consequences for their actions. The commanders who had ordered the attack on Nexus 7 were arrested and transported to Earth for trial. The process was fair, but thorough. Evidence was presented. Witnesses testified. In the end, most were convicted and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. A few who had shown reluctance or tried to minimize civilian casualties received lighter sentences. The reparations were paid in full. Every family that had lost someone in the attack received compensation. Not just money, but recognition. Their loved ones' names were inscribed on a memorial that would stand on the rebuilt Nexus 7 forever. And then came the apology. The High Chancellor himself traveled to Earth to deliver it. He stood before the human parliament, his mechanical shell dim with what the humans had learned to recognize as shame. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I express our deepest regret for the attack on Nexus 7. We were wrong. The people who died were innocent. Their deaths serve no purpose except to remind us of our own capacity for cruelty. His voice echoed through the silent chamber. To the families of the victims, I offer my personal condolences. Your pain is real. Your anger is justified. We cannot undo what was done. We can only promise that it will never happen again. He paused, gathering himself. To humanity as a whole, I offer something else, respect. We came to this galaxy believing you were primitive, insignificant. We were wrong about that too. You have shown us strength and courage beyond anything we have witnessed. You have also shown us mercy. You had every right to destroy us. Instead, you offered peace. That took a different kind of courage. The High Chancellor bowed his massive mechanical form. We are honored to call you our equals. We look forward to building a new future together. A future of cooperation instead of conflict. Of understanding instead of fear. When he finished, the chamber was silent. Then, slowly, humans began to applaud. It was not the thunderous approval they gave to war heroes. It was something quieter, sadder. The applause of people who were finally allowing themselves to hope. In the months that followed, the galaxy began to change. Human and alien ships started working together on joint patrols. Scientists from different species collaborated on research projects. Cultural exchanges brought beings together who had once seen each other only as targets. It was not perfect. Old hatreds did not disappear overnight. There were incidents of violence on both sides, protests from those who felt the peace had been bought too cheaply or sold too dear. But it held. Somehow, improbably, the peace held. 5 years after the war ended, a ceremony was held on the rebuilt Nexus 7. Representatives from every species in the Galactic Council attended. So did thousands of humans, many of them survivors of the original attack. The centerpiece of the ceremony was the unveiling of the memorial. It was a massive structure, visible from orbit. Names covered every surface, 400,000 names, each one representing a life lost, a story ended, a future stolen. Admiral Kethris and David Chen stood together near the front of the crowd. They had become something like friends over the years, partners in the ongoing work of building peace. It is beautiful, Kethris said softly. Sad, but beautiful. That is what we wanted, David replied. Something that would remind everyone what we lost, and what we chose not to lose. A human woman took the stage. She was old now, her hair gray and her face lined with age. But there was strength in her posture, fire in her eyes. David recognized her. She was the woman from the footage, the one who had attacked the Velthari soldier with a makeshift weapon. The one who had kept fighting when any reasonable person would have surrendered. My name is Elena Torres, she said. Her voice carried across the crowd, strong and clear. I was here when the attack happened. I lost my husband, my daughter, my home, everything I had built over 50 years destroyed in hours. The crowd was silent, hanging on her every word. When the war started, I wanted revenge. I wanted to hurt them like they hurt me. I wanted them to suffer, and for a while they did suffer. We made sure of that. She paused, looking out at the mixed crowd of humans and aliens. But revenge did not bring my family back. It did not fill the hole in my heart. All it did was create more holes in more hearts, more grief, more pain, more children growing up without parents. Her voice softened. I will never forget what happened here. None of us will. We carry our dead with us always. But we have chosen to carry something else too. Hope. The hope that our grandchildren will live in a galaxy where this never happens again, where people see differences as reasons to be curious, not afraid. She gestured to the memorial behind her. These names remind us of the cost of hate. Let them also remind us of the value of peace. Let them be a warning and a promise. A warning about what we are capable of when we give in to our darkest impulses. And a promise that we will never stop trying to be better. Elena Torres stepped back from the podium. The crowd erupted in applause, humans and aliens standing together, united in their commitment to a different future. Kethris felt something wet on her face. She touched her cheek and discovered tears. Are you all right? David asked. "I am crying," she said with wonder. "I did not know my species could do that. Maybe you learned it from us." Kethris laughed softly. "Perhaps. We seem to be learning many things from each other." After the ceremony, they walked together through the rebuilt city. It was different now than it had been before the attack. New architecture rose alongside the old. Memorial gardens occupied spaces where buildings had once stood. The streets were filled with beings of every species, talking and laughing and living together. "When I first came to that council chamber," David said, "I told them humanity was coming, that we were angry, that we would burn the galaxy if we had to. I remember, the recordings were widely circulated. You became quite famous." "Infamous, more like." David smiled wryly. "But I meant what I said. If the war had continued, I think we would have done it. Destroyed everything, including ourselves, rather than accept defeat." "What changed?" David thought about the question. "Kethris, I think. You, specifically. You showed me that there were people on your side who wanted peace as much as we did, who were horrified by what had been done in their name. You reminded me that our enemies were not monsters. They were just people, scared and confused and capable of terrible things, but also capable of change." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "You saved us both. Your courage in reaching out, in defying your own government to seek peace. You did that, and I will never forget it." Kethris bowed her head, touched by his words. "You give me too much credit. Many beings worked for peace. I was just one of them. But you were the first person from the council to look at us as equals instead of threats, the first to offer a hand instead of a weapon. That mattered." They stood together on a street corner, two beings from different worlds who had somehow become partners, friends, perhaps the closest things to family either had left. Around them, the city of Nexus 7 lived and breathed and grew. Children of multiple species played in the parks. Scientists collaborated in gleaming laboratories. Artists created works that blended styles from across the galaxy. It was not perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was better than war, better than death, better than the endless cycle of hate and revenge that had nearly destroyed them all. Somewhere in the distance, a bell began to ring. It was the memorial bell, which rang every day at sunset to honor the dead. David and Kethris listened together as the sound rolled across the city. 400,000 chimes, one for each victim. It would ring for hours. "This is what they fought for," David said quietly. "Not revenge, not victory. This, a future where their children could live in peace, where their deaths would mean something." Kethris nodded. "We must make sure that future continues. The work is not finished. It may never be finished, but we must keep trying." "Together?" She placed her hand on his shoulder, a gesture she had learned from humans. "Together." They walked on into the evening, two representatives of species that had once tried to destroy each other. Now they worked side by side, building something new from the ruins of the old. Above them, stars burned bright in the darkening sky. The same stars that had watched galaxies rise and fall, that had seen countless wars begin and end, that had witnessed horrors beyond imagination. Now those stars watched something different, something rare, something precious. They watched peace, not the peace of exhaustion, where enemies simply lack the strength to fight anymore, not the peace of domination, where one side crushes the other into submission. This was something else, something harder and more fragile and infinitely more valuable. This was the peace of understanding, the peace of choice, the peace that comes when beings decide that their similarities matter more than their differences. Humanity had come to the stars looking for friends. They had found enemies instead. They had fought back with everything they had, making the galaxy tremble with their fury and their refusal to surrender. But in the end, they had found something better than victory. They had found connection, partnership, the beginnings of a galactic community that actually deserved the name. The humans had made the aliens tremble. Now they were teaching them something else. They were teaching them to hope. And in all the long history of the universe, few lessons had ever been more important.